What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Fantasy Advocate channel. Today, we're talking about the Cam Akers injury and what does Darrell Henderson entail for us? Is he going to be an RB1 upside, or is he going to be a player that underwhelms us with his ADP rising? Let's get right into it. Now, before we talk about the free agent running backs that are available and the draft, the guys that they've taken in the past 2 years, whether it is undrafted and 7th round, let's talk about Darrell Henderson and what opportunities could be there for him, right? So Cam Akers had 156 before he tore his Achilles from last year, and then newest Miami Dolphin Malcolm Brown gave up 134. Now, Henderson, in the 15 games that he did play this year, had ankle issues, which we'll get into later, but his metrics were actually really good. In weeks 2 through 7, where he was the lead back in both snap share and opportunities, he had 14.1 PPR fantasy points per game, which is actually very solid. His DVOA RB rank, which is defensive adjusted value above average, ranked 4th in the NFL, right behind J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, and Derrick Henry. That's pretty elite company if you ask me. And in almost every grade spectrum in terms of elusiveness and efficiency metrics, he was right next to Cam Akers. So while I expect there to be a step back, it's not going to be a huge step back because Henderson is actually a solid running back. 15% of his runs were 10 yards or above. Now, with the current depth chart, we'll go ahead and get into the touches that are there. And really, there only is 4 running backs who are completely unproven, and we'll get into them later. So as of right now, Henderson's a guy who's by himself in this backfield, and while we do expect somebody to take along those opportunities that were left behind by Akers, Brown, and Henderson, who's already has 150 opportunities, we're looking forward to it. Now, the only issue with Henderson as a player is his injury concerns, right? He's missed 9 games in the past 2 years with ankle issues. It's always been ankle issues. So if it's the same injury to the to a similar part of the body, we are concerned. Now, SIS does a projection of how many games it's likely for Henderson to miss, and he ranks 6th amongst running backs with the percentage chance that he could go and miss 1 game at 25%. He's currently nursing an ankle injury. He's not even full for training camp, so all this hype that's gone around him has yet to be proven because he's not going to be able to get on the field. Now, let's talk about their current depth chart, right? Darrell Henderson's going to be the number 1, and that's pretty obvious. But let's move into the guys who are unproven and see if they could possibly be something in this Rams backfield. We're going to start off with their number 2, and that is Xavier Jones, a undrafted free agent last year out of SMU. And looking at his player profile, it was shocking that he didn't get to go to the combine, right? Because he was a solid player at SMU, unfortunately medical redshirted, so he's kind of older in age, but he's the biggest back out of all these guys. 5'11", 208, and then a 29.0 BMI. He's going to be the guy that they've actually looked at as their touchdown option, and he's gotten praise from Aaron Donald, he's gotten praise from Sean McVay, and right now he's sitting solidified as their second running back on the board. And in terms of stealing touchdowns from Henderson, if there's one guy in this backfield that will end up doing it, it is Xavier Jones. Now, we'll look at the other 2 that I want to look at, and that is Raymond Calais and Jake Funk. These are guys that I can put together because they're just not really guys who I don't think will contribute in the game at all. They are explosive. They have very high athletic scores, but both of them were drafted as special teamers, right? Calais was a kick returner last year, and he's going to stay that way. And then Jake Funk as well is a player who he's very athletic. He's a few years behind because he was redshirted as well due to injury, but he has a very, very good athletic score, and he even has a solid target share. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets some receiving work maybe in this backfield, but in my opinion, if there's anybody in this backfield that's going to be able to get this work, it is Xavier Jones, and that is in the goal line work because he's their biggest powerful back, and he had 25 touchdowns in 13 games at SMU. So that's something to take into account. Now, the possible free agent running backs that they would be looking at, and I decided to make a list of 7 that I want to quickly go over, and we're going to categorize these as well. The first one's going to be by himself, and that is Todd Gurley. Now, Todd Gurley, everybody's promoting for him to have a reunion with the Rams. Now, I don't see that this is going to happen unless it's a feel-good story, because we saw with his knees, he's just not the same running back as he once did, and if he goes into that system, what additional value is he going to add to this team, right? If they believe in Xavier Jones, Todd Gurley is a guy who they really don't see value in as a power back, because let's be real, Henderson's an efficient back. They'll use him in the rushing game, so Gurley doesn't really have anything if his receiving game is not as good because his knees are just not the same. Now, moving on to receiving backs, Duke Johnson and Chris Thompson are players who can take the Malcolm Brown role and actually be a 1B in this offense, and is something that I could actually see happen. Now, with Malcolm Brown, he was second in the NFL in terms of the amount of slot snaps he had amount of slot snaps for a running back, right? So somebody needs to take on that role, and Cooper Kupp's obviously going to take some slot work. So will Deshaun Jackson, so will Tutu Atwell. But Duke Johnson and Chris Thompson will be able to man those works if they are brought in. Now, do I think they take away from Henderson's rushing work? Not really, because Chris Thompson, let's be real, has never gotten major rushing work, and Duke Johnson only really did in Cleveland his first 2 years. Now, Le'Veon Bell is a player who, I'm just going to throw on this list, but Le'Veon Bell is a player who could possibly sign here, but I just don't see it with them. Now, Raekwon Armstead and Bo Scarborough, I'm going to categorize together because they're young players who really have some upside. I think Raekwon Armstead is a name that people aren't talking about enough. 4.45 speed, got cut by the Jaguars due to COVID complications, and if he can be healthy, he could actually be a flyer that they would like. He was a highly touted guy at a Temple. Not highly touted, but he was a guy who a lot of people like. And I think given another opportunity with the COVID, I think he could be able to shine. So that's a flyer that they could take on. Keep in mind, they don't have a lot of draft capital, and they don't have enough cap. They don't have a big enough cap. So in terms of going out and trading for James Robinson, going out and doing things like that is just not realistic. So Raekwon Armstead's a player that I like. And then Bo Scarborough is going to be a guy that if they are brought in, watch out for Henderson and watch out for Xavier Jones, because he could be a guy that steals the touchdown work along with Adrian Peterson. I wouldn't want those guys to be brought in if I'm Darrell Henderson, right? Now, what to do with Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers if you're in Dynasty? Now, this is a different situation because Darrell Henderson is a player who's getting a lot of hype as of right now. And with Cam Akers, he's falling off a cliff in terms of value because the fact that he tore his Achilles, which is an injury that most people want to stay away from. Now, with Henderson, if you are a team who is somehow in rebuild mode and somebody offers you a first-round pick, pull the trigger on that immediately, because Henderson's a player who he's not going to steal all this work. And even with this year, this will be the highest workload he'll ever have. This is the highest value he will have. So if you're able to get a first round pick out of Henderson, I would absolutely do it. And if you're in win now mode, it does make sense, although I would try to offer a second and then a player instead of a first, because I do like the 2022 running back class, whether it's Spiller, whether it is Breece Hall. I think both of those guys are really good. And with Cam Akers is a player who I like a lot. And obviously he tore his Achilles, so that's going to be a major blow. But I've seen some crazy stuff. So if you're able to get a mid to late second round pick for Akers, I would pull the trigger on that. And then somebody sent me a trade today of he got Cam Akers for a third. That's just ridiculous. So in dynasty formats, hold on to Cam Akers if you have him, unless you get like a first, which won't happen. And then Darrell Henderson, be ready to move him at the right price. And if you're in win now mode, go ahead and grab him if you're a Cam Akers owner. I'm okay with it. However, keep in mind, Henderson's going to be a 1 year guy, and I expect RB2 numbers from him, but nothing more. And then after that, it's not going to be the same. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and peace out.